Okay, so in this video, we're going to do some stretches for the front of your thighs and the front of your hips, or to relieve some tension from the front of your thighs or the front of your hips. It might be good to have some props nearby, just in case you need to use them throughout. If you see over here, I have a mess of props, literally a mess of props off in the corner. Quite a few blankets, bolster, block, strap. We may or may not need them, but it's good to have anything that you have to use nearby, just in case you need it. So gather those up, and once you're ready, let's start in downward facing dog. All right, so I do want this class to still feel as if you're doing a yoga class. So instead of just going straight after thigh stretching, I'm going to have you do some down dogs and some other poses here and there that may not be completely related to stretching the front of your thighs, but that's just to keep it feeling more like an actual yoga class. So just settle into down dog for a few more breaths. Just wake up your body. Now, if you can manage it, on your next exhale, step your right foot all the way between your hands and lower your back knee down. If that's too challenging, though, if you can't get your right foot there and easily, go ahead and lower your knees down to the floor. Then step your right foot forward between your hands. And then bring your hands up to your front thigh. Once you come into this low lunge position, if you notice that it's just too much pressure on your back knee, this is where one of your blankets could be helpful. Just what I would do, since we're going to do a few of these low lunges, is just fold it up to an appropriate degree. Place it underneath that back knee. But since we're going to be alternating legs, it'd be good to have it go crosswise on your mat. So you can use that same prop for both sides. Your tailbone, move it down towards the floor. In fact, actually come up out of the lunge a little bit, just so you can move your tailbone and your buttocks down towards the floor, as well as lift your abdomen up away from the floor. Right there, once you do that, you might notice that the front of your left thigh, the stretch there starts to intensify a little bit. Just keep that going on, and then go back into your lunge. Then from here, go back to downward facing dog. So step back to down dog. Just take a couple breaths here with your knees bent and your heels lifted. All right, now, second side. Step your left foot between your hands and lower your back knee down. Or if you need to lower your knees down first, then step your left foot forward, please do that. Once you've kind of settled in, move your hips back so the hips are more over your back knee, and then move your tailbone down. Another way of saying it is, instead of just down, move your tailbone a little bit underneath you and forward. That same concept. All I'm really wanting you to do is actually rock the top rim of your pelvis backwards, so it actually pulls on those muscles that line the front of your thigh and the front of your hip. Then try to maintain it, and then go ahead and go back into a lunge. Lunge a little bit down and forward, then lift your chest up. All right, next exhale, step back to downward facing dog. Again, bend your knees and lift your heels up. The down dog, if that's just way too much on your body, you can always just put your knees down step your hands forward, and you can get a very similar spinal stretch here with your knees down. But if you can do the down dog with the knees off the floor, let's go ahead and do that. But again, step your right foot between your hands, lower your back knee down, come into that low lunge position again. Again, bring your hands up onto your front thigh, and we'll just repeat the low lunge again. So move your tailbone down and a little bit forward. Then lunge, try to maintain that lunge into your low lunge position. This time, reach your arms up overhead. Now still, keep your back toes tucked under. And with your back toes tucked under, now dig them down into your mat. So go ahead and dig down through your back toes. Lift your chest and even slightly back bend here. Reach your fingertips up. Step back to downward facing dog again with your knees bent though. Again, if you need to do more of like a half down dog, then just bring the knees down, step your hands forward, maybe even release your head all the way down to the floor. So you're stretching your spine. But then with an exhale, step your left foot forward and lower your back knee down to the floor again. Low lunge, second side. Again, move your tailbone down, pick your belly up. Go into more of a little bit more depth to your lunge, so move your hips down and forward a little bit. Then reach your arms up overhead. All right, dig through the toes on your back foot. So really dig through that big toe mound. So dig down there. Move your tailbone down, lift your side waist up, and start to back bend a little bit. Maybe even take your gaze slightly up. Stretch your fingertips up, stretch your arms up. So go up and a little bit back. Then step back to downward facing dog on your next exhale. Now, if you have a prop on your mat, go ahead and just set it off to the side for a moment. Pull forward to plank and then lower all the way down to your chest. Now, prop up onto your elbows and your forearms and come up into lift your chest up into a Sphinx Pose. And once you get into this position, lift your right thigh up, stretch it back. Place it down, and then do the same on the left side. So stretch your left leg back, place it down, and then keep your legs active here. So elbows, place them around like outer shoulder width apart. There's a little bit of play there, of course, and then lift your chest up. All right, let's go back to downward facing dog. So you could just push up to a push-up or go up to your hands and knees and then pull your hips up and back into down dog with your knees bent again. All right, bring your right knee behind your right wrist into a pigeon position. All right, now pigeon for some of us, it's really not that nice of a pose. So if you happen to be someone where sort of like me, where the right hip is pretty high off the ground, or if you have knee discomfort, you might need to modify this a little bit. So I'm going to choose to put something underneath my thigh, underneath my right thigh, my right hip, and then bring the torso upright. So still doing this pigeon pose in a way that actually focuses on stretching the front of your left hip or the back leg hip. So instead of folding forward, actually lift your chest up. Again, now make your back leg active. Go ahead and stretch through your back leg. You could choose to keep your hands down on something if you need a little bit more support. If you need to share the load, you could definitely do that. But as well, if it's too much stretch on your back hip, don't bring your torso so high. Keep yourself leaned forward a little bit. And then over time, start to crawl the hands a little bit higher away from the floor, and then crawl the chest up, the side waist a little bit higher away from the floor. Downward facing dog though. Knees bent. Go ahead and keep your knees bent and your heels up and your buttocks up. So stretch your spine out. And then switch sides. Left knee behind your left wrist. Come into pigeon on the second side. One side will always be a little bit different than the other side. So if you don't need the prop on this side, you don't need the prop on this side. Or if you need a prop that's a little bit lower on this side, it's pretty natural. All right, once you get your hips settled in there, go ahead and crawl your torso upright a little bit more. Still trying to get myself settled in. So step your hands back. Admittedly, I would benefit a little bit more today if I had 2 blocks underneath my hands. I only have 1. So I'm going to just use 1 block and then stay up on my fingertips of the other hand. As this hip, my right hip, compared to my left hip in this position, the right hip has more adhesion in there. There's something holding me back a little bit more on this side than the other side. One more inhale. Step back to down dog on your exhale. All right. Again, knees bent, heels up, hips up. Stick your buttocks up. Plank pose. Lower all the way down to your chest. Again, that last pose we did while we were down here, we call it Sphinx Pose. So let's come up into Sphinx Pose. Or what is known as Sphinx Pose in the yoga world. Lift your chest up. Again, if just being in this position is a little bit too much on your lower back, you can always lower your chest down. So feel free to step your elbows farther forward if that's the case, and even out to the side a little bit more if your lower back just doesn't like it. But those of you that can, keep your chest lifted. I do want there to be that feeling of back arch in the lower spine, middle spine. All right, some of you may need to stay here for this next one, but others, go ahead and bend your right knee. And then with your right hand, grab the inner foot. Now pull your heel towards your hip. Do as best you can with this one. This is a little bit of a combo pose. You get a shoulder stretch or a pec stretch, front of shoulder stretch, but you also get more of a quadricep stretch. Those of you that actually can take the heel all the way down to the hip, feel free to take the heel all the way down to the hip. All right, let's go ahead and release this side. Come back through center. In between sides, just lower your head all the way down for a moment. So make a pillow with your hands, bring your head all the way down, or just turn your head to one side and rest for a couple breaths. Just want to make sure your lower back stays healthy and happy. Okay, come back to Sphinx Pose. Second side, bend your left knee. With your left hand, grab your inner foot, and then start to close the knee joint. Start to flex the knee joint by pushing your foot down towards the floor. Now again, on this side, I don't have as much available space to work with, so turning my hand forward like this is just a little bit too much today. I think it has to do with my left shoulder, really. My shoulder isn't really feeling that position. Oh, or it is feeling too much in that position. That's more accurate. Okay, release. Downward facing dog again. Take your time though. Go to hands and knees, stick your buttocks up. Do down dog with your knees bent, your heels lifted. Then lift your buttocks up more. Right leg forward into Pigeon Pose. Again, if you need that prop set up underneath your right hip, then insert something underneath your right hip. And come down to your forearms for this one. All right. Now, if this next variation that we're going to do, which is essentially tying Sphinx Pose where you grab the foot in with this pose here. So lift your chest up, bend your back knee, and see if you can grab your left foot with your left hand. If that isn't available to you, I want you to repeat the last version of pigeon that we did, where you're just upright here, and don't even bother reaching back for your left foot. All right. Now, you could stay with your chest lifted like this, or bring your right forearm down to the floor. Maybe even bring your head all the way down to the floor. Just keep closing your left knee joint as you do it. All right, release that back foot and step back to downward facing dog again. Again, knees somewhat bent, heels lifted, hips lifted, lower back pulling in. Then go left leg into Pigeon Pose. So go left side, pigeon. Use your prop if you need it. Lower your back knee, back thigh down, and lift your chest up. Bend your back knee. Reach back and grab your foot if you can. Stay here, done. Like, this is a great place to stay. Or bring your left forearm down and stay here. Or bring your forehead down and just keep folding forward while holding on to your foot. Okay, release. For this one, let's step into a plank pose for a moment. All right, so I want you in plank pose to lift the front of your thighs up. So right where not just the front of the thighs, really right at the top of your thighs where your thigh bones meet your pelvis, so the hip crease is there. I want that area to lift. So you might need to bend your knees a little bit. In fact, bending your knees, I know on my body, gets that area to just kind of suck in and pull in a little bit more clearly, a little bit more freely. Pull back to down dog with your knees bent. So just once you pull back to down dog, step your feet in a little bit, bend your knees, lift your heels, lift your hips. And just take a few deeper breaths through the lower abdomen. All right, now come all the way through and lie down on your back. Have your block really close by or within arm's reach, or if all you have is a blanket, just have that nearby. Fold it up in half, at least in half. Bend your knees and step your feet as wide as your mat. Reach your arms out to the sides and lower both your knees to the right. All right, once you lower your knees to the right, you're going to notice that the left side of your body is going to lift up. So the left hip is going to lift. The left ribs are going to lift. You're going to back arch a little bit. This is great. I want you to keep doing that. But then from there, walk your shoulders underneath you a bit more, just so you get more of that back arch or the chest lift. And then lift your left elbow just above your left shoulder. So if it's not as high as your left shoulder, bring it as high as your left shoulder. And then make sure the elbow goes a little bit above, in line with your shoulder. Those of you that it's comfortable enough to reach your left arm overhead, reach your left arm overhead. And then with the right hand, grab your left wrist or your forearm and then pull up through it. So now back arch more. Send your left knee and your left wrist, your left hand away from each other. You're welcome. Okay, come back through center. Square it all up. So if you're more than likely your hips kind of shifted out of line with the spine, square it up again. Drop your knees together, close your eyes, take a breath. Okay, let's do the other side. Lower your knees to the left. Now, some people just call this like windshield wiper legs. It doesn't truly resemble, a classic yoga pose. So we'll go with that. We'll go ahead and just call it windshield wiper legs. So lower your knees to the left and reach your right elbow just a bit higher than your right shoulder. If your right shoulder is okay with it though, then reach your right arm all the way overhead. Then with your left hand, grab your right wrist and give a little pull. If that's too much, it's too much. Just readjust your right shoulder, right arm. But now back arch even more. All right, let's come back through center. Square everything up because your hips probably moved around. Step your feet apart, drop your knees together, close your eyes, take a couple breaths. All right. Now the next one, I think it's best if we sit up to come into it, as it might work. It'll probably work for more people if we do it that way. Okay. Well, granted, for most of us, the knees are somewhat sensitive to be doing certain things, and it's understandable. It's a fairly flawed design. It's just my own opinion on the knees. So if this becomes too much, instead of leaning back and taking your knees into a position more like this is flexion of the knees, then I want you to do less of the flexion, as this is what we're about to do is going to put a lot of demand in that position or towards that position. Okay, so come to all fours, or at least into this position. Point your feet. Separate your feet so they're a little bit wider than your hips. Grab your block or whatever prop you have available, and then sit down on it. Okay. If this is too much, whatever prop you have underneath your hips, make it thicker. So go higher with your hips away from the floor. So if you need to be all the way up higher, then do that. But here, keep your right leg as is, and then step your left foot out of that position. So bottom of left foot to the floor. Now from here, just step your hands behind you and start to lean back. All right, now if you're finding this to be too challenging, so truly, you can actually just lift your hips up off that prop, and this might be enough to relieve any pressure, too much pressure in the knee. But if it's just the case that like there's no way this is going to happen, you might want to lie back down and repeat what we just did with the windshield wipers. All right. Otherwise, those of you that can start to take it farther. So if you can go ahead and bring your forearms down to something, go for it. So I'm going to stay right here, as I could tell my body is going to be okay with going all the way down to my forearms in a moment, but not yet. So if you need to take it slower, take it slower. All right. Guess we're not getting there today. Go ahead and sit upright. Come back to all fours for a moment, just so you have less pressure on the knee joints there. And then we'll switch sides. So this position here is considered hero's pose, or a version of Virasana. From here, step your right foot out of the hero's pose, just so it's in the your right foot's flat on the floor. It's considered more of a Marichyasana position. Then from here, recline, considered Supta Virasana variation, or half Ardha Supta Virasana variation. You'll be tested. There's a test after you finish the class. Handwritten, not multiple choice. Okay. Yeah, if you can come all the way down to your forearms, or come all the way down to the back, all the way down to your back in this position, feel free to do so. My body's not going to agree to do that today. I could easily force it to do it. It's just not going to. Probably the outcome probably won't be worth it. All right, if you're reclined, go ahead and sit upright. Let's go to down dog again, just the last time for this class. Let's go to down dog. Just pull up on the front of your thighs. So your knee muscles, pull them up. The front of thigh muscles, your quadriceps, pull them up. All right, and then come down to your back again. If you have a bolster, grab a bolster. Have it off to your side. If you only have a block or you just have a blanket, you can use those as well. If you just have the blanket, I would suggest make it look like this, and then just fold it in half. You know, kind of what you did for your knee joints or your knee earlier. But if you have a bolster, it's even better. So lie down, lift your hips up, and place whatever prop you're using underneath your hips. So we got one more thigh. It's not so much a thigh stretch as it's a hip flexor stretch that I'm going to have you do, that we neglected to do earlier, or that I didn't have us do earlier. Pull your right knee in towards your chest, and then lift your left leg up. All right, and then the left leg, start to lower it down, so extend out through the leg. I don't actually want the foot on the floor though, so I want you to keep the left heel just off the floor. And then more than likely your leg is going to try to roll out. Let it roll out. So don't try to keep a neutral position at all. Just let the thigh roll out if it needs to roll out. So with this one, you could play with how high of a lift you put underneath your hips, and play with that. You could do this lying down in your bed, lying down on your coffee table if you have the strong enough and coffee table to use. You just keep your hips right at the edge and let your leg kind of dangle off the table there. All right, bring your left leg up. Right leg up. Switch sides, pull your left knee in, and then slowly extend out through the right leg. Let the right thigh roll out if it needs to roll out. All right, bring your right leg up. Hug your knees into your chest for a moment. That might feel good. And then bring your feet down. Remove or lift your hips, remove your prop. And then let's find the corpse pose for a couple minutes. All right, stretch your legs out. Bring your arms down by your sides, close your eyes, and relax for as much time as you have available, okay? Again, thanks for practicing. If you want to see more videos like this in the future, subscribe, turn on the notification bell. If you want to see other videos with different focuses, leave me a comment down below and I will read them. Thanks again.